PLC Network here with another unboxing, this time coming from the company ELEGOO. And this is the Centauri Carbon 3D printer. This is one of the company's latest models that's been out for a little bit now this year, and it's been pretty much, I'd say, taking the industry in storm because it's one of the better 3D printers out there for the consumer market. It's bigger than your typical build plate that we've been or grown accustomed to over the years. It's faster. It has all those variables that you find in today's modern models that have accelerated the 3D printer industry for the consumer market and everywhere else, because it really touches on, along with many of these other modern models out there, it touches on all of these things that people have complained about over the years. When you say, oh my gosh, 3D printing is amazing. It is so cool. It's the greatest hobby or even business to get into because it's challenging. It allows you to really tap into your creativity. You can almost achieve anything with a 3D printer because you're only limited to your own creativity. But then you have those things that you fall into going, well, nothing's perfect because it's slow, takes time, there's a lot of calibration that you have to play with, a lot of this, a lot of that, before everything just simply works, especially with some of the older Creality and Sunny printers and so forth. So there has always been some growing pains, as we build into this future of 3D printers that we're currently in. And now we've touched on a lot of those things. Well, we haven't. Companies like ELEGOO have. And now they're able to really throw out a lot of these variables that enhance some of these things that the community have complained about over the years. So fast, it can get hot, it's enclosed, there's a lot of variables. So let's go over some of those. One of those is that this is one of the more popular models out there in the market right now because it is great for advanced users, all the way down to those who have never touched a 3D printer in their life. Entry level, first time users. ELEGOO says that this works right out of the box, and it does. And I'm not saying that from personal experience, it's based on what we've discussed with other people over so many months, and it actually does carry its weight in gold when it comes to some of these claims. So does it work out of the box? Yes, it will work out of the box. Now, given there's some asterisks there, of course, because nothing simply just click the button, it does everything for you. You do still have to understand how to use a slicing program, but it auto-calibrates everything. So full auto-calibration for the build plate and everything else. So that way you just turn it on, let it go through all of its calibrations, and you're ready to go. You can just start printing. There's no endless tinkering of trying to get that build plate just right. It's able to detect all of that and calibrate it for you so that you don't have to. And that's what makes it ready to print out of the box. This is a Core XY style printer, which means it's two motors moving on an XY axis to be able to achieve the print. And it has a maximum velocity of 500 millimeters a second. So none of that being limited to, like 30 millimeters a second to really get that fine quality, or, even though they, companies used to promise they can move up to 100 or 150 and you're lucky to go past 30 unless you want your print to go flying off the thing, not to adhere properly, any of that. All of that, for the most part, is gone. Now we have printers that can move to 500 plus and they work. Now, of course, 500 is a maximum. There is a recommended speed. ELEGOO themselves even say that they recommend don't going past 250 unless you know what you're doing. And if you know what you're doing, keep in mind that quality comes into question when you start moving at those faster speeds, because it's going to be moving way too quick to get that real fine detail. So if you just make something really quick, you just need it now. It's just a little part real quick to fulfill a purpose and nobody's going to be staring at it. You don't care if it's pretty, it just needs to work. Then yeah, you can take it up a little bit more. It has a total acceleration speed of up to 20,000 millimeters squared. Explaining that's a little bit difficult, but just think of it as that you're not always moving in a straight line. You're moving this way, you're moving this way, you're moving in curves. So it's looking at a more complex description when it comes to its max acceleration speed as it's trying to perform its function. It doesn't really do that, but so that max is 20,000 millimeters squared. And that's how companies are able to put a value on something like that. And yes, that value is absolutely acceptable in the modern age with today's top, we'll say, 5 consumer printers, which I would say this falls into. It's fully enclosed and comes with a glass door, so that way you can see what's going on inside. And the biggest important variable there, or to focus on, is the enclosed part, because when we're working with certain types of filaments like ABS, you want heat. You want to be able to maintain the heat that's inside of the printer, that's on the build plate, the nozzle, everything else has to be perfect if you really want your print to come out right. So that way it's not warping, it's not falling off the build plate, it's just not turning to just mush. Heat, being able to control that is super important, and having an enclosed environment for your 3D printer allows you to obtain that. And now when it comes to temperatures, that's where everything gets neat. Build plate can go up to 110 degrees Celsius, and the nozzle is good up to 320 degrees Celsius. Yes, 320 degrees Celsius. This allows it to get really hot and allows it to be really adaptable when it comes to all the various different popular filaments that are out there. Of course, you can do the normal ones like PLA, PETG, ABS, ASA, TPU, you get the idea. You have all those to work with this right out of the box, as well as support for carbon and glass fiber reinforced filaments, which are they say are for more like aerospace and automobile usage and things like that. Now, when it comes to consumer level models, you're not going to get too crazy with all of that. You're not going to want to send your parts up to space per se and use them in situations where the safety and health of others are dependent upon, their life is dependent upon those parts working, but it at least gives you much more durability and success rates with today's modern consumer filaments. Of course, not everything is about temperature to be able to achieve these capabilities. You also have to focus on various different things like the build plate itself. Now, you have a large build plate with this. It's 256 millimeters by 256 millimeters by 256 millimeters, giving you a pretty large space to work with. And then you also have a dual-sided build plate sheet that goes over the top. It is a flexible plate, so you can pop off the film or pop off your print at the end. But one side is your typical textured PEI surface, while the other one, if you flip it over, is dedicated to PLA specifically, so that way you can get more successful prints when printing with PLA. You also have a brass hardened steel nozzle, which allows you to be able to get those temperatures up to 320 degrees Celsius. I remembered it that time, 320 degrees Celsius. So that nozzle is the key to really being able to build up that heat without, deterioration of the nozzle or any other issues. So you have speed, you have heat, you have so many things going for you to be able to really get the perfect print no matter which filament you're using, or at least hopefully get the perfect print with whatever filament you're using. But of course, as it's working, maybe you're not always there to just sit there and stare at the glass. Maybe you want to walk away, you want to go do something else, clean the house, sleep, go to work, and you want to be able to still maintain, kind of visual, contact of, how is it doing? So that way you can stop it in case something goes wrong. And with today's modern printers, you're going to find that most really good printers, such as this one, have a camera inside. So it has a built-in camera so that you're able to visually see what's going on. In case something goes wrong, you can tell it to stop. Save that print, save that filament. And then of course you also have dual LED bars in there, so that way it keeps everything bright, so that way you don't miss out on anything when that camera turns on, or as you're walking by, you can still see everything inside of the enclosed chamber. Not only do you have cameras in there, but those cameras do record, obviously, because why wouldn't they? And they offer time-lapse support so that you can share your finished print with everybody, and at least the progress of it as it prints up in a quick time-lapse, so you don't have to post a whole 9-hour video or something when nobody wants to see that. So all of you streamers out there and or just users who just love to share their work, you have that option to upload time-lapse videos with the built-in camera, and you don't have to add that yourself. And of course, like most printers, it supports USB and Wi-Fi. You're able to send prints right to it. And of course, you can just put a bunch of prints, your finished G-code files onto a USB drive and just stick it in there and do it directly. And like most printers, it supports multiple slicers. Now you have support for the ELEGOO slicer, the Orca slicer, and Cura. Of course, ELEGOO does recommend using the ELEGOO slicer for the best results. Of course, they're gonna say that. But ultimately, it's gonna end up to what your user preference is. If you are an Orca user and you prefer to stick with Orca, you can stick with Orca if you so choose. But for the most support, and per ELEGOO slicer is the way to go, especially if you're new, if you've never done this before, if you're not an experienced user in the 3D printing realm, then yeah, start with ELEGOO Slicer, and once you've become ultra satisfied with your successful experience using that slicer, then you can determine if you want to dabble with something else like Orca to see if you like that better. And then there's all the other variables that this thing has to offer, like most modern good top 5 printers on the market for consumers. The list goes on forever, but we'll name off some of the main points that include power loss recovery, fan self-check, auto filament unloading, you have a filament runout detector, you have a semi-automatic belt tensioner, you have a heated nozzle wiper, as well as a filament waste basket or bin, a filament bin where it drops any kind of waste material into there. So that way you can get rid of that and it doesn't go all over the build plate and all inside the enclosure and everything, which can get kind of messy to clean up. Kind of gave up trying to count things with my fingers there, but we can go on. There's other features out there, but most of those features are pretty much kind of obvious in terms of what you'd expect to find in today's 3D printers. So as you can see there, there's a lot going for this model. Again, it's fast. It can get really hot. It works with most all consumer types of filament out there, including the carbon and glass fiber reinforced filament. And that's out of the box. You don't have to keep swapping heads and changing things out. It just works. You just make sure that you configure things properly in the slicer, of course, to make sure that the outcome is what you expect. So then we talk about the price. That's a lot going for this printer. Printers like the Creality K-series are like $1,000 and up, or roughly around that, depending on which model you get. These can get pretty expensive, but this one's a little bit smaller, 256 by 256 by 256. It's more of trying to achieve what those printers are capable of, but in a slightly smaller and user-friendly footprint. And even with that, you'd expect, okay, this is going to be kind of expensive because, this compares to something like Bamboo's P1S or something. But then you think about that. Well, that's not really as expensive as, like Creality's K-series. So wouldn't this be less than that since they're trying to compete with Bamboo? And Bamboo's kind of a bigger name that's out there and kind of known for just simply being expensive. Well, yeah, this is going to be more affordable because ELEGOO wants to kind of just stick it to Bamboo a little bit and say, haha, we're going to be able to do what your printer can do, but for less. And by less, I mean $329 MSRP. Now you'll see it higher and lower because it goes on sale frequently, but the MSRP seems to be $329.99, which is an amazing and perfect price point for something like this. This takes on the Ender 3 and Ender 5 world that, that has been so commonly, I don't want to say an industry standard, but it does a really good job of just kind of pushing those off the table and going, for $300, you can do so much better. So that's ELEGOO, setting a new standard, raising that bar, offering it at a good price point, and with all the features that you'd really expect to find in something a little bit more. So good job, ELEGOO, and they really have something going for them with this. So now that we had that incredibly long discussion about what it can do, let's go ahead and take a look at it. We're going to open it up, and we're going to see what it looks like inside, what it comes with, and how difficult it is to really put it together, because most of it's already assembled. There's just certain things you got to do to remove a few things that protect it during shipment. But let's take a look and really see what that is. So we have plenty of foam here protecting it during shipment, so that way nothing gets scratched or kind of jarred around any, keeping everything in place. So you have the user manual here. It's just a relatively, I'd say, simple user manual that just shows you what comes with it, as well as some screen operation guidance in terms of the touchscreen that you do. That's one of the things you have to install. That allows you to work with everything locally on the printer in case you have a thumb drive of prints on there, or you just want to control the various different settings directly. And then you have a simplified user guide that just shows you how to take everything and put it together, which we'll get to in just a moment. Here is the glass. This might be the top. Looks like the top. Yep, this is the top because you want to be able to have access to the top and the front, not just the front, because you got to get to some of these pieces sometimes, just in case you have to repair something. We're just going to move that to the side and take off some of this plastic. And it definitely has that new electronic smell to it, which is always nice. So in the back here, you can see some filtration chambers here, or fans, chambers, fans, chambers, fans. You know, air comes out this way. And so that way it can breathe and help control the heat that's inside. You have your filament waste bin right here, so that way filament can trickle out the back and you can just put something down there to catch it with, and if it doesn't already come with something, which it actually might. You have your power cable, which is just your standard IEC cable, and a power switch. And then of course, this is where your filament goes in. So you put your filament through the feeder, filament goes into the back of the printer to the extruder, and off you go. Well, off it goes. On its side, you have your section for where the filament wheel is gonna be. So this is where you're gonna attach the filament wheel, put your filament on there, and feed it into the feeder. On the bottom of it, you have some breathing space for the electronics inside, as well as some rubberized feet here to help prevent it from sliding around, which is so incredibly important because these newer 3D printers move so incredibly fast. You won't believe how much they shake. So that helps to keep the printer still. And of course, you know, it has its own electronics and software to make sure it compensates for any kind of shake, so that way its own shaking doesn't throw off the print. Then you have the front. You have a data ribbon right here in the front and a USB port here for plugging in a drive so that you can put prints directly onto a drive and insert it directly into the machine. Inside, you just have some foam you need to remove that protect everything. I'll go ahead and open that up. As you can see, it's relatively pretty easy to get rid of all of this stuff. Anything beyond that, you're going to want to refer to this awesome little simple guide, which just says, take out the foam and toolkit from the printer, your toolkit, unlock the heated bed, which you do by using the Allen wrench to remove the 3 screws in the picture. And you'll be able to do that by looking at the toolkit. It's all your parts and pieces that you get to work with, plus it looks like a little bit of sample filament, a glue stick, and other things that you commonly find or use with 3D printers. Of that, you have your IEC cable to Edison for powering it. You have your spool, which is pretty easy to work with. It just goes on the side over here into that little hole and just turns into place and locks. Some of these smaller items here, you have that before mentioned glue stick. You have a USB drive, so it's probably gonna have some test prints on there. The scraper blade, or a scraper blade. You have some grease, 3D printer. This is good for various different things, such as this screw on the back that allows the plate to move up and down. You wanna make sure that's greased at all times, usually like every 6 months, about once a year at least. You wanna be able to keep that greased. You have some sample Rapid PLA Plus filament. Now, this is important. If you want success in your rapid prints, you want Rapid PLA Plus, or just Rapid PLA of any kind. Rapid filament. That helps because it's actually meant to work at different temperatures, move faster, so that way you can get a better flow of filament from the printer as it's moving in those faster speeds. You have a simple nozzle cleaner, as well as looks like a nozzle cleaner, which might be an extra. Yes, it does. It looks like this is an extra. So this is a hot end nozzle wiper that it kind of just wipes all the gunk off of with. There's already one installed in there, and this is an extra one you can install yourself in case that one just falls apart over time. And you have 2 screwdrivers. You have 1 Phillips, 1 flathead, and 4 hex keys, excuse me here. So that way, all your maintenance on this is covered with the included tools. You shouldn't have to provide any of your own. Most 3D printers usually will come with that. And then you have the screen. The screen is a touch screen interface. It's capacitive touch. I mean, it's pretty simple. In terms of connecting this, just connect the ribbon into it and attach. That's where this data ribbon plugs into, and then it just goes into the teeth and locks into place. So let's go ahead and do some of this. Put those instructions. We can focus on those screws in the picture to unlock the bed with. Now, it does specify in here as well. You have stickers. You have one here, and where's the other one? One right here in the back as well. Those are the 3 screws that you have to unlock to allow this build plate to move. So we have the 3 screws removed to help unlock the build plate with, and now we can move on to the next item, which isn't mentioned on here, but what you're going to want to do is remove this piece here that is protecting the printhead. And there you go. Now that is nice and loose and ready to move around and do its thing. The nozzle is already installed and everything. That comes already put into the unit. You only have to worry about buying another one in case something, God forbid, happens to that one, and or you need different sizes. In case you want to move to a 0.6 or 0.2, for example, instead of what I believe it comes with, which is 0.4. Yeah, 0.4, which is common size that most printers will come with. Now the next step is connecting that screen. Again, this is relatively simple, it just snaps into place. And then once you have that in there, just kind of push the ribbon to the hole a little bit, and then push, once you put them in the holes and just push down, locks into place. And that's it. At this point, you turn it on, you do your device self-check by, it says do not tap or shake the machine during the self-check because it needs it to go through all of its different auto calibrations. It'll tell you on the screen, self-check completed when it's done, and then test your first print. And you can do so by inserting the USB drive, which I thought that usually most of these models comes with some sample prints that you can work with right off the bat. Since again, not everything works when you just shove it in there. You can't just take anybody's G-code file and throw it in there. You want to make sure it's sliced for this specific machine and the filament that you're using. So obviously ELEGOO has already provided some examples that are already sliced and ready to go to show off what this printer can do. So we'll get to that in a moment. We'll show one more thing here. You have your build plate right here. Now, this isn't a normal PEI sheet that you get that's really super thin and floppy. This is actually a really durable, I don't know why I just like that sound, a really durable sheet for your bed here. And again, you have two sides to it. You have your typical textured PEI here, and then you have the one here that is dedicated for PLA. And it does tell you right here on the front, it says PLA/TPU ABS PETG carbon fiber textured PEI plate. Adhesion, 3 stars, like how they rate it. And it's really just telling you for those specific types, this is pretty much your go-to for most printing, except for when you're doing PLA. So this one, if you peel that off, you can see this is the PLA special one. This is the B side, optimized for PLA printing, and then this side for everything else. So you have your A side and your B side for PLA. Now what's nice is when you're putting the blade in there, it does kind of have grooves in there to help guide the plate in, so you know that it's in place perfectly every single time, and you're not just moving it around like some of the older printers typically have, because it's just a flat surface and you always have to make sure it goes on so neatly. And this, it just has grooves, so it just kind of helps you feed it in right into place each time. We'll go ahead and turn it on. So to start off, you're going to choose your language, which in our case is English, and it's going to tell you, hey, use the hex key to remove those screws. There's 3 screws. We already did that, so we can say confirm. Of course, it says make sure that the filament chamber is free of foreign objects, and we have done that, so we confirm. And now it's going to go through its device self-check, and you just hit test. And basically, it's going to run through all these commands right here on the screen. That includes nozzle heating, heated bed heating, heat break, cooling fan, main board cooling fan, input shaping, and automatic leveling. So this might take some time, so you'll have to have a little bit of patience. All right, so we booted it up, we have it calibrated, and we even printed some test prints already. Now, mind you, it wasn't as easy as that. Unfortunately, when we did go to start the calibration, we immediately turned it back off because we realized that the belts were all loose, or at least one half of the belt coming off of the printhead was loose running through the machine. And that was because it was just something that was due to shipment. And unfortunately, when you have ultra-sensitive machines like this that need to be finely calibrated and treated with care, sometimes when you ship them, they just don't come to you in the way that they should. So, to the defense of ELEGOO, we'll point out the fact that when this arrived to us and they placed it on the ground, they placed it on its head. The whole box was upside down. It was a little bit scraped and scuffed as well. So who knows what happened during shipment of this thing. UPS or whoever delivered it might have had a little too much fun with it. But because of that, the belt became loose from the print head that helps move it in the XY axis. Without that belt being attached to it, it's not really going to be able to perform its job. So We reached out to ELEGOO and they were kind enough. They have a whole video showing how to replace the whole timing belt, which shows you how to also fix the timing belt. We could have gotten a new one, but we decided, you know what the heck, let's just try to fix it ourselves. We took the whole thing apart, as you can see here, and we actually went through the trouble of reattaching the timing belt to the print head. But once we got everything working, put everything back together again, guess what? It worked flawlessly. It went through its calibration, it finished everything up, and started printing, or at least we started triggering the test prints, and everything came out perfectly, which is a pretty big, I'd say, applause to ELEGOO for making a very stand-up and solid 3D printer. This thing is very durable. So we printed the benchy. Now this benchy, as you can see in the video here, we are not speeding up the process. This machine moves fast, and it was able to 3D print this benchy in just 15 minutes. That was it, 15 minutes, showing you the speed and capabilities of this machine. Now, keep in mind that you're not always moving at the top speed, because again, you have 500 millimeters per second velocity of the print head as it's moving around. That's a lot. But you're not always moving at that speed because, of course, you want accuracy, especially when you want fine detail, which really applies to the next item I'm going to bring up in just a second. But for this one, I don't know if we know exactly how, we don't know how fast it was moving because it was just a demo file that's on the USB drive that it comes with. But it came out perfect, and it was moving so incredibly fast, it was actually shaking the desk here a little bit. So that was impressive. Now, we have another test print, and it's the Eiffel Tower. This thing, it's small, you know, it's not the whole point of this is tiny bits of detail in a small footprint. Can you do it? And without any supports whatsoever. And the Eiffel Tower has been a very popular print for that because it's just a fantastic model. And to be able to print this out without any supports is always a good, thorough stress test to any 3D printer. And it did it. Now, obviously, it didn't do it in 15 minutes. It's a little bit bigger than the benchy, not by much, I mean by a lot, but it's a little bit bigger. But in terms of how much filament is being used, it's not that much greater. It's just a lot more detail, a heck of a lot more detail. So it's going to take longer to print something like this. Now, if you print this on an older printers, like say the Ender 3 or 5, this could take forever to print. And yeah, probably like 5 hours, is that what you said? No, 6 hours plus, 6 hours plus to be able to make something like even maybe 9 hours, depending on the model that you have. Like the Ender 5, we would have to dumb this down to about 30 millimeters per second to really get that fine detail like this. But this one was printing incredibly fast to be able to create this in 2 hours. That was it, 2 hours. You could move faster, but you would lose detail if you did that. And in that, even though it was moving so fast, the accuracy is phenomenal compared to some of the bigger ones that we've printed. It's quite comparable. When you look through it, you can see just the tiny little holes through the structure and everything. Very intricate. The top, the rounded arches of the crown of the Eiffel Tower. I don't know what you'd refer to that as. You have, some, at the bottom sections of the archways down here, it's a little rough, but it's not bad. And on the inside, there's a little bit stringing for where there's no supports in the dead center underneath here, but nothing that really pops out as abnormal for what you wouldn't expect for something moving so quickly. So I would say that this was very successful. Now they provide a lot more test prints that come with it, including a handle that, pretty much to create a scraper tool out of, and that is what the scraper blade is for. You would print that handle, you'd screw that into place, and now you have a scraper. So it's kind of like two birds with one stone. A, it gives you something else to test print with and have fun with. It also saves them money because they don't have to send you a whole tool, they just give you a blade. Also, it's interchangeable, which is kind of cool. But of course, 3D printers, you're probably gonna wanna go buy a proper scraper anyway. They're so useful to have, highly recommended, and it can cover a larger area than a tiny little blade, such as this. But they also have a really cool test print of an actual, it's pretty much a print of the machine itself. It's the shape of the machine, but it's made for what everybody refers to, the poop chute on the back. So as everything comes out the back, it just sits behind a 3D printer and collects all of that stuff as it falls out. So that way it isn't just falling out all over your desk. Also, one less thing that they have to include in the package, keeps the weight of the shipment down, price down, etc. And then there's also a holder that goes on the side that holds the top too, because you don't always have the top of the unit installed or in place, because anytime you're using a low temperature filament such as PLA, you want to remove this top cover and just slide it into there, or if you don't print that, just put it off to the side, because you don't want it to get too hot inside the machine for something like that. But again, I can't stop bragging about how well the printer did. No issues. Everything just works, which is all you can ever ask for from a 3D printer, especially since if you've been 3D printing for a while, you've probably lost sleep on some of the hardship that some of the older printers had when it comes to consistently calibrating and tinkering with to get them to work how you want them to work, which is just, to work. But this works right out of the box. It really does. And for only $329 MSRP, and sometimes more or less, again, depending on where you buy it and or if you get it on sale. It should be on sale, I believe, by the time you see this video, hopefully, maybe. And of course, there is Black Friday. Black Friday is coming up. You can definitely bet that you'll likely see something on sale somewhere, be either from ELEGOO directly or from Amazon. There's a pretty good high chance of that. Black Friday is always good for us when it comes to 3D printers, and that's it. So to learn more, definitely go to the website at plcnetwork.net, where we're going to have a full review on this later on once we've actually taken more time to print additional prints out of this. Instead of doing the test prints, we're going to come up with our own. We're going to slice some things up and see how they come out. How fast can we push this printer? Using ELEGOO Slicer, it looks like the default it wants to recommend is like around 100, and I think it's 105 millimeters a second, which isn't the fastest when it can go up to 500. So we're going to try to push a little bit, see what we can accomplish out of it. But for fine detail items, of course, tone it down a little bit, move it slow, and you'll be fine. But you'll find more information about that at plcnetwork.net once we've had enough time to really test this out, really do some prints on it, and see what we can accomplish. And we'll include that link down below in the description, and as well as links on where you can find it. So if you liked what you've seen here, definitely remember to click and subscribe and follow us if you don't already. And click the like button on this video so we know that you like this specific video. And also take advantage of the comment section below in case you have any kind of comments or suggestions or questions for us, for each other, and or even maybe for ELEGOO in case they are watching. And as always, we thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time. If you want to stay on top of all the latest and greatest, and or at least the gadgets we cover, remember to subscribe right here. Subscription button. Click it. You're going to want to. There's lots of videos, interviews, previews, all sorts of stuff. Button. Click it.